Hello, welcome to another video from the conscientious biologist, Ben Gallagher. This is the second one in the evolution series and it looks at adaptation and competition, which are kind of the underlying principles behind evolution theory. It's suitable for GCSE and please do subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Thank you. So we're going to start off by talking about something called selective pressures. These are the pressures that drive evolution, that kind of push everything forward. But let's put it in context. So life spread all over the planet and has created some very different environments. We mentioned these in the last video, the biomes. You've got rainforests, deserts, tundra, which is kind of the freezing open sparse lands. You've got woodlands, grasslands, and you've got savanna. But of course, these are only the environments that are on land. We've also got the oceans, we've got shallow seas, we've got by the shore, we've got deep seas, the open sea. There's loads and loads of different environments on the planet. Now, to survive in its environment, all organisms must have characteristics that help their survival. There must be things about them that mean they can survive in their environment. These things are called adaptations. Please very good adaptation. It's got a TA in the middle of it because the word is adaptation. It's not adaption. Please get the word right. It's adaptation, not adaption. But those changes, those characteristics that make them good at surviving are adaptations. Now, adaptations arise due to specific selective pressures, which is what this slide is about. Selective pressures are the things that make life hard or that can kill you. They put pressure on life to select the organisms that are well adapted. Now, only the strong organisms survive. And what we mean when we say strong is it's those with the best adaptations to their selective pressures. And the selective pressures will be different in the different biomes. We call those organisms the fittest. So you've probably heard of the term survival of the fittest. It's the basic phrase that goes with evolution. So if it's strong, if it's got good adaptations to the selective pressures, we can say it has a high level of fitness or it's very fit. Okay, so we've got survival of the fittest, but it's survival of the fittest just until something fitter comes along. So just if you are the fittest, you surviving, you might be dominating. If a mutation happens to create something else that's fitter, that might destroy you, take your stuff, and you're going to die out. Or something from another area might come in that is fitter and lead to your extinction as well. So it is survival of the fittest, as long as you can hold on to being the fittest. So the main selective pressures are, 1, the abiotic, that's the non-living environment. Things like weather and temperature and terrain. Non-living doesn't mean dead. Okay, non-living means the stuff that has never lived, that isn't made of cells. Okay, so non-living, so temperature, whether it's hot or cold, is it dry, is it rocky, things like that. Those are the things that will kill you first. If I took you out of your current environment and I put you in the Arctic, you'd freeze to death before anything else happened because of the abiotic factor of temperature. Second selective pressure is the availability of food. If you can survive the abiotic factors, you then need to find food so that you can get nutrition so you don't starve to death. Of course, think about the digestion lessons. You need the food so you can break those polymers down into your own monomers to build and integrate as part of yourself. Now, of course, you need to get food, but other things need to get food as well. So if you're in a biome or in an environment that has a lot of predators, that's a big selective pressure on your survival. So you need adaptations to make sure you're good at avoiding those predators. For disease, we all need to be adapted to have immune systems or some way of preventing ourselves from getting disease. And lastly, this one's a bit different to the other 4. Selective pressure of finding a mate and reproducing, because the first 4 selective pressures are about the individual survival. You would survive if you can tolerate your environment and the abiotic factors, if you can find food, not become food for something else, and not die of a disease. But your species will die out when you die out if you don't find a partner and breed and produce the next generation. So that 5th one is really important. So creatures must have adaptations to be able to find a mate, successfully reproduce and raise offspring so that they can replace them. Now, the strength of these selective pressures will vary in different habitats. In some habitats, there may be less food available. So the pressure to find food is much greater. In some habitats, there may be loads and loads of predators, so you've got to be much better at hiding. In some environments, it might be really, really cold. So there's a massive pressure on you. If you can't tolerate that freezing cold, you're going to die. So the strength of the selective pressure varies in different habitats, but it also varies over time. We're in a period of massive climate change. Our planet is changing, even though we are sitting in the same places, in the same environments. It is changing around us. That's going to change the strength of the selective pressures. And if a species can't evolve new adaptations fast enough, it goes extinct. So that's adaptations, that you've got to be adapted under the selective pressures. But there's also competition under those selective pressures, and competition is a major driving force in evolution, because to survive, all organisms must compete with each other under those same selective pressures, and competition occurs every time two creatures both want the same thing. The intensity of the competition depends on the strength of the selective pressure, though. Okay, we started to mention that a minute ago, and sometimes the competition is very, very aggressive. So in this picture here, we've got two male lions fighting over a female. It's because only the one main lion is allowed to breed with the females. So you've only really got one chance, one opportunity there as a male lion to breed. So the females are a very, very limited resource for the males. So they're going to fight very, very fiercely with each other. And indeed, male lions have that big mane as protection, because when they fight, look at what's happening in the picture. The male lions bash and claw at each other. Well, they'd kill each other pretty quickly, and then there'd be no males left to breed with the females, and lions would go extinct. They'd kill each other pretty quickly if they didn't have the manes to absorb the claws, so it didn't actually slice each other's throat. So it's more a fight of strength. But that's a very, very aggressive competition. It would also be very, very aggressive if there were 50 lions and only one wildebeest to eat. They're going to fight over it. Very limited amount of food, lots of lions. The competition is going to be very, very aggressive. But sometimes it's totally passive. If you look at these wildebeest in this picture, they eat grass. The grass is growing out of the ground. There's loads of it. The wildebeest don't start kicking off and fighting each other over patches of grass, because there's plenty for everyone. So they don't fight in that case because the resource is quite high. And sometimes if the resource is really plentiful, the competition is barely even noticeable. If you look at this rabbit, you wouldn't look at that rabbit in a field and go, oh, kicking off in there now, start getting trouble there, because the rabbits are eating grass. If they're in competition for that grass, they're not even aware of it, because there's loads of grass, especially in the summer or in the spring when there's been rains and it's growing quickly and there's loads of it. Actually, competition does increase in the summer if it's really dry and the grass isn't growing, and you might find rabbits start to get a bit aggressive and start chasing each other off from any decent patches of grass. But generally, if the resource is plentiful, the competition is barely noticeable. Sometimes you might not think it's noticeable as well, when it really is. If you look at these gazelles running away, you might think, well, that's just some gazelles running. But actually, they might be running away from a predator. Now there is definite competition, but it's only competition to beat the other gazelle, so you're not the last one. You don't have to be the fastest gazelle. You just can't be the slowest, because the lion or cheetah or whatever is going to catch the slowest one and catch, kill and eat that one. The others will all escape. It kind of guarantees that the slowest and the weakest of any species are the ones that die out because they can't compete. So actually, competition, as cruel as it may sound, helps to keep the overall species much stronger. So very quickly summarising what we've said there just in 2 quick sentences, but with 5 key terms in it, we could say that organisms have evolved many adaptations to help them survive under the selective pressures of their environment. This increases their fitness, which gives them an advantage when competing for resources and survival. Really simple. If you're asked to explain sort of evolution in a nutshell, that's it, those 2 sentences. Let's look at a few examples, though, of adaptations under different selective pressures. Okay, so first one, great white shark, an amazing highly evolved creature. But let's go down in the order of the selective pressures and try and tick a few things off. So first, it's abiotic environment. Well, for a start, it lives in water. It still needs to breathe oxygen. It still needs to get oxygen for respiration. So it's got gills. Gills are an amazing adaptation. They filter dissolved oxygen out of the water. Okay. Second thing about its abiotic, because it's water, water is obviously more viscous than air, it's harder to move through. So they've got this streamlined body, okay, hydrodynamic body, pointy at the front to cut through the water very easily. They've got the fins at the sides and the top to help them glide through and steer through that medium, and really powerful muscular tails with a large surface area on the fin to power their way through. So they're perfectly adapted for living in water, their abiotic environment. If we think about getting food, sharks in general have loads of amazing adaptations. They're highly evolved. I mean, sharks haven't changed a great deal, or rather have just refined themselves and got better and better since way back in the time of the dinosaurs. Sharks were swimming around in the oceans at the same time that dinosaurs were on the planet. So these have been evolving for a very long time to perfect things. But things about getting food. So they've got eyesight, they've got eyes, but their eyesight isn't great. It's only useful once they get close to the thing they're going to eat. But what is amazing, they've got a fantastic sense of smell. They can smell tiny concentrations of blood in the water and sort of zoom in on the scent trail as if they're smelling something out, to zoom in on an injured prey to try and catch it and eat it. They've also got in their nose, they've got an organ in their nose that can detect electricity being given off in the water. Now, electricity is given off by all living things in our nervous systems. So even without their eyes or ears or smell or anything, they can detect the bioelectricity given off by living things and zoom in on it and hunt it. That's amazing. Okay, that's a really good sort of sixth sense that we don't have. Really sharp teeth. Some sharks, like makos, their teeth point backwards, so when they grab onto something, they can't wriggle away. So for getting food, they're really good at it. Predators. There's not a lot of predators for great white sharks. One of the main predators of great white sharks is other great white sharks. The other predator for them is an orca or a killer whale that have been known to kill sharks. But again, they're very fast, they're very powerful, they're actually really well camouflaged as well. If you look at the colorations here, easy to see from the side here because you can see darker on the top, paler on the bottom. But actually from in the water, if a shark was beneath you and you were looking down into the depths of the ocean, it's dark. And the back of the shark beneath you is dark, so it's camouflaged when you're looking down. If it's swimming above you, if you're a sea creature, and you're looking at the daylight above you, the bottom of the shark is pale. So it's camouflaged against that as well. So no matter where it is, a shark has reasonably good camouflage. So they're pretty good at avoiding predators and not being seen. They also have an incredible immune system for not getting diseases. They've also got some really weird reproductive adaptations. There are some shark species where the male has 2 penises, so it's got one as a spare. It's a good adaptation. There's other species, in fact, massive variation in how they have their young. Some sharks lay eggs. Some of them lay their eggs under rocks. Some sharks give birth to live young. Some sharks have a sort of placenta or equivalent. So the sharks have a belly button, which is really weird. One type of shark gets pregnant with multiple offspring inside it, but there's no nutrition available for those sharks. So they have to kill each other within the mother, within the uterus, until there's only one left and that one gets born. But already it's born a killer. So it's a good way of ensuring only the fiercest, meanest sharks get out. It's pretty brutal, but it's an interesting bit of evolution. Let's move on to another one. So an African elephant now. We talked about elephants way back at the start of phase 1 when we were doing surface area to volume ratio. Because of the abiotic environment this guy lives in. So this guy's in Africa. It's very hot there, but he's very large. Elephants being massive means they have an enormous volume and not much surface area. That would mean they wouldn't be able to lose heat, exchange heat with their environment. But elephants have adapted to get around that problem by having these massive ears. That gives them an enormous surface area through which to radiate heat. So the main reason why African elephants have these enormous ears is actually to cool down. They also use them, like in this diagram, as a threat display. When they're trying to make themselves look even bigger and scarier, they flap their ears out. This is a really aggressive pose from this elephant. But really, their ears are about surviving their abiotic environment. For getting food, they've got those enormous tusks that they can use to break down trees, strip the bark off it, and they can eat the bark. The tusks, of course, are also used in competition for fighting off other elephants or other creatures. Their trunk is an amazing thing when you think about it. A trunk is just a really long nose. Well, if you think about your nostrils, most people can flare their nostrils. I'm trying to do it there a bit. I'm sure you're doing it now as you watch this video. But you can control the muscles around here. Well, imagine if your nose was really, really long and you could get really good control over those muscles. You could use your nostrils to grab stuff. Well, that's all a trunk is. It's basically a face arm. They're using their nose and the muscles of their nostrils to grab at stuff. So it's an extra arm. Why do they need an extra arm? Because they haven't got any arms. We've got arms because we evolved to stand upright. All things that are four-legged remained with 4 feet, essentially. So because they don't have hands, because they don't have arms, they evolved a face arm, a trunk. Okay. In terms of escaping predators, well, they're just massive. It's one of the main reasons for their size is because they're too big for most predators to attack. So size is a big advantage when it comes to avoiding predators. We're going to move on and go quite quickly because I don't want to go through too many of these. Let's jump to polar bears though, just because they're a brilliant extreme example. They live in the freezing conditions of the Arctic, the very northernmost part of our planet. So it's really, really cold there. So of course their main adaptation, really thick fur. Not only is it thick, but each hair fibre is hollow, so it can trap air inside it, which makes it even better at insulating them. They've got really small ears, opposite to the elephant, to reduce their surface area so that they don't lose heat. They've got massive paws, so they can walk around on the snow without sinking. Incredible sense of smell, so they can smell out seals. They can smell seals through a couple of meters of compacted snow to get to the chambers that the seals have that they dig from underneath the snow. But a polar bear can smell them through the compacted snow and break down into it and use their claws to dig them out. And of course, then huge claws, big teeth to kill them and eat them. So amazing, highly adapted creatures. And in terms of reproduction and keeping their prey alive, so this is a female mother bear, polar bears keep their young with them until the cubs are old enough to fend for themselves. So taking care of your young is a really clever adaptation if you want to ensure there's going to be another generation to replace you. Okay, last one to pop up onto the screen. Hopefully no one screamed and dropped their phones or whatever you're watching this on. But just a common garden spider. I just want to mention this one because so many amazing adaptations go totally unregarded and unappreciated. Because I'm sure when you were little and you went out into the garden and you saw a spider's web for the first time and said, oh, what's that? And your parents said, oh, it's a spider's web. You just went, oh, okay, that's a spider's web. Spider made that. And that was it, jumped out of your mind. And you've never really stopped to appreciate quite what's going on there. Because while all creatures have got faster, bigger, fiercer, got claws, got teeth, whatever, to hunt and catch and kill their prey, spiders developed a way to create a trap from stuff that they produce from their own bodies. That's amazing. You think about the equivalent. Think how much your mind would be blown if you went on safari in Africa and you saw a lion pooing a net and stringing it between 2 trees, producing a net from its bum that it put between 2 trees to trap a gazelle. Mind blown. And yet that is what a spider does, and it goes totally unappreciated. So being able to create spider silk is an amazing adaptation because it means whilst the spider has to put a lot of energy into making the net, it then doesn't have to put any energy into actually hunting and catching prey. That's an amazing adaptation. Now I could go on and on about all the creatures of the animal kingdom because everything has amazing adaptations. We could talk about a tortoise and how its shell gives it protection. A chameleon has eyes on stalks that can rotate, a tongue that can blast out. You may think with a chameleon, oh, it's camouflage as well, but actually master of camouflage would be a cuttlefish. They can change the colorations in their skin really quickly to blend in and camouflage or to give a warning display. It's amazing adaptations. A desert fox with its huge ears for hearing, a cheetah with its incredible speed, porcupine with quills to avoid predators. All of these are big, dramatic, amazing adaptations. But most adaptations aren't that big and ostentatious. Most adaptations are generally far more subtle. Just think about it. They come about through changes in DNA called mutations. Well, your DNA codes for proteins. So if you've got a change in your DNA, a mutation, then the adaptation is just going to be a new protein. Yes, that could be a protein that means you can change color, or that you build your skeletal structure in a different way to build a shell on your back. But actually, if they're just new proteins, then the adaptations wouldn't be visible on sight because there would be metabolic and biochemical advantages. Something as simple as being able to make a slightly different but better enzyme in your saliva, meaning you can digest the food better, get more nutrition from it, so you get bigger and stronger because you're getting more food than everything else because you can digest it more efficiently. But you wouldn't look at any creature and be really impressed by going, oh, he's got a better form of dribble. But that's an amazing adaptation. So you need to start thinking about adaptations in terms of subtle protein changes that can accumulate over time until you've got some truly amazing creatures. Okay, now we've focused entirely on animals in this because that's the easiest way to get your head around the concept. What I want you to do now is go to evolution 3 because that looks at some plant adaptations, most of which we've covered in previous units, be it either in the osmosis ones, where we looked at some examples of plant adaptations as regards osmosis, or in the photosynthesis lessons. But there are some other plant adaptations we need to look at. And also we're going to talk about something called extremophiles. Phile means loving from the Latin. Extreme, that word just means extreme loving. So we're talking about organisms that live in very, very extreme environments. So head there next, that's evolution 3. As always, I'll ask you to please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, like this video if you found it useful, and head over to my Facebook page and have a look at some of the more random bits of biology that I've put on there. Thank you.